Hello, today we're going to talk about ego and what it is. A lot of times I hear since I was a child about how ego is normal, especially in men, and that you have to stroke their ego and all these things. And it's bothered me for a while now, so I figured I'd do a video on it. First off, here's what ego is typically. Now, there's always exceptions, but what I found is that ego is simply the body protecting something from being exposed. And usually it's protecting something from being exposed that it fears. So, for instance, the most common one that I see is the ego is created. It's a persona, a false self created when you fear that, like, let's say in your job, that you feel that you're an imposter, that you don't belong there, that you're a manager and you really aren't good at your job, and you fear that people will see that you don't really know what you're doing. And so the ego is, again, a false self created to protect that persona, to protect you from that fear being exposed. Now, it doesn't really work because people see it, all the time. And a lot of times, like even in work situations, people will see, oh, you're new to the role. And so there's a lot more grace given to you. But then also, like, people will say, oh, they don't really know what they're doing, so here, let me fill in, because it's to their best benefit, to meet your best benefit, to not only to make you look good, but if you know what you're doing and you're able to serve them well, then they're willing to give you the information in order for that to happen. So often it's unnecessary and it doesn't work, but it is something that in our society we have accepted as whole, even though it's not. Again, ego is usually a false self protecting something that it fears being exposed. And so thus it's not normal to the human condition. So I'm going to talk about the other half of it, which is getting rid of it. It really isn't something that is consciously usually gotten rid of, although it is. It's usually a side effect. The fruit of what process that you'll engage with will naturally get rid of it, because I believe it was Jan Van Zant, but maybe it was a saying longer than her, that said, in the end, you'll show up and you'll have nothing to hide, nothing to protect. And there's a couple other words, but really, like, you'll just show up in the world with nothing to hide and nothing to protect, which is basically living without ego. What begins to happen as you begin to do the soul work, which the soul work is being authentic to yourself, making decisions out of what do I feel, what is true, and being radically honest with yourself, and then living out of that honesty altogether, you begin to accept yourself more. As a byproduct of that, you begin to accept others because you have nothing to hide, nothing to protect, nothing to defend. And so when you begin to feel things like shame, or people put shame on you, you will not accept it, because you're like, I'm not these things. But even if I was, if I'm feeling this, and there must be a good reason, or, you start getting a good grounding of who exactly you are, and you don't accept those behaviors. Likewise, you begin to have a wider vision of who other people are, and by proxy, you begin to accept them further, because you begin to have a more intimate or profound or perfunct understanding of people, and you begin to seek to understand, because you don't have as many of those needs anymore. So for instance, your beauty standards, where it's like, this is my type of person, that may actually go away for you, because what will begin to happen is you'll begin to see people as individuals, and you go, okay, the stuff that's you've got going on, that works for you, and you'll start moving by curiosity, and not by type, because the type is usually a societal function anyway. If I have this type of girl or this type of guy, then this is how society views me. And this is what I'll get. And if I don't get this, then, this is how people will view me, or whatever. And also a narrow mindset. All these things go away when you start approaching life with curiosity and start allowing your body and your soul to lead. So by proxy, a lot of times the ego goes away, because you will not accept anymore, because you accept yourself. You will not accept anyone putting you under shame or under guilt. And you live in radical truth. And so living in radical truth, what you think will happen is, I don't know what I'm doing, and so then I'm going to lose my job. What actually happens is you have that thought, then you go lay down, and then you get back up again, and then something will say, okay, go read this book, or go here, or start listening to this, or start noting what you don't know, start paying attention to where you can find those answers, ask these people, be honest here, things begin to move. And so as you begin to embark on this journey, naturally the side effects begin to shift, and you won't basically have an ego anymore. And it really, a lot of negative things in this society is born out of lack of process. So as you begin to engage in the process, you'll begin to get rid of a lot of this stuff anyway. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about how ego is not normal to the human condition. And when you start living in authenticity and truth, here's some of the side effects that begin to happen, as well as one of them, the main one being, you lose your ego. Until next time.